That's me, Catherine Tinkler. A noisy little baby, according to my older siblings, Mary Ann, George, and Annie. One might imagine life growing up within a large family of 17 souls being somewhat unusual by modern standards. It just felt normal to me, and so many other families who live around us in Paterson. Mama seemed to always be expecting, most of the time. The birth of a new baby brother or sister was like a fresh new gift. Hard-working Papa lovingly doted on us every day. The concept of time didn't really mean much to us as children until later when I became interested in boys. But more about that later. Before adolescence arrived, we children were all taught and were expected to do lots of domestic chores to help Mama. My Papa worked for Mr. Charles Reynolds at Attinger, where they kept him busy breeding lots of race horses and other prize-winning livestock. Papa was very good with animals. He loved horses, and especially horse racing so much that he later bred and raised his own horses at every opportunity in the local district. My brother George, who became a famous jockey, was named after our Irish grandfather, George Tinkler. George was the eldest boy, by 5 years to me. He was so much stronger than my sisters, Annie, Mary Ann, or myself, so thankfully he was expected to chop and carry all the firewood for Mama. The elder sisters gained lots of experience assisting Mama with household chores and taking care of 13 younger children that came into our family. The last baby being born 25 years after George in 1872. By this time, I was 22 years of age, and I had my eye on a particularly handsome young man by the name of John George Hall. There he is, look, the boy I intend to someday marry. John would say it was he who chased me, but it was I that led him. Very few people are aware that within a pleasant half-day's ride from Maitland, a very fine waterfall can be seen. It is situated some 5 miles west of Paterson, on the dairy farm of Mr. John Hall, named Moneybunk. A good road leads from Paterson to Mr. Hall's farm. The farmhouse is nearly on top of the hill, and the stream of water supplying the falls flows near the farm buildings, towards a deep gully.
Sir, I'm deeply in love with your daughter, and I beg your permission to ask for her hand in marriage.
What? What? Are you mad?
Mama and Papa never wanted me to marry my sweetheart, John George Hall, but we were so much in love, we ran away to West Maitland and were married, July the 4th, 1877. Some parents liked to pick who their children would marry, and they thought I could do better. But I had just turned 25 and Johnny was 29. I could not, and would not, wait any longer. Once we were married, there was nothing my parents could do. None of the other children had married by this time. Well, let us begin at the beginning. You see, soon it would be time for us to return home. We lived with Johnny's family at Moneybunk Farm, west of Paterson, and a few minutes' ride from my parents who lived at Port Nahich Station. Johnny took me back to a very special, magical place on their property called Moneybunk Falls, where we used to chase one another as children, and the place where we first kissed. Starting my own family a little later than Mama, she was 18 years of age, 7 years younger than me, when she had her first child. By the time she had her last child, She was 46 years and Papa was 55. Let me introduce you to Edithan Hall. John and I managed to have a further 5 more lovely gifts just like Edithan. Johnny's father, John Hall Sr. died suddenly in 1874. The lease owner, for Moneybung Farm, Abraham Nevy's son refused to renew the family's lease, and the whole family sadly had to leave Moneybung Farm just after John and I were married. John placed a job wanted ad in the Maitland Mercury to be a manager of a sheep or cattle station, stating he has been all his life among stock, and he thoroughly understands all station requirements. Johnny received a reply, but the job was located at Hungerford and Cunnamulla in southwest Queensland. Over 600 miles inland, away from our home and family in Paterson. As a young boy, Johnny had long read about fantastic stories of exciting bush cattle drives and wild Brummie musters. He had a long one-day to go there too. Now Johnny has been offered this chance. It will be very hard for me to let him down by saying no, and he would never even think about going there on his own and leave his new wife and child behind. A trip such as this would mean we would all have to go there together. I weighed up all other alternatives available, and I finally agreed with Johnny, for the 3 of us, to make the move to the great outback, known as the Never Never Country. At this time, the average cattle station in southwest Queensland has from 8 to 10,000 head of cattle, 150 to 200 horses, and will be worked by the manager and 2 stockmen with half a dozen or so jackaroos. Mustering is a busy time, and they muster for calves about 4 times a year, when notice is sent to the adjoining stations to attend and get any of their cattle that have strayed away. Each station sends a stockman and a jackaroo boy, with 7 or 8 horses, and on the day appointed they turn up. Next morning the station horses are mounted by the jackaroo boys, and are in the yard shortly after sunrise. After breakfast, the boss goes down to the yard to draft out the horses required, after which, there is packing and saddle up, and what with horses objecting to be caught, and then arguing the point about getting saddled, it's then about dinner time when the job is finished. After dinner, the start is made, and as some of the horses have not been ridden for 6 months, there is nearly always a buck and jumping match. Down goes its head, and then the horse is off. If a good rider is on, he will sit back and ride the horse out, but if a new jackaroo is on, away goes his horse, and the air is thick with curses from the rider. Later that night they camp out, and after supper, they retire about 8 o'clock. When the first streak of daybreak is seen, the jackaroos are after their horses, while the others boil the water and make the tea. After breakfast, they start out in all directions, to muster back to the camp. After dinner time, there are mobs of cattle coming from all directions to the camp, and as soon as the first mob gets to it, they are rounded up, and the men who have brought them hobble their horses and boil the water for dinner. Mob after mob come in, until all hands turn up, then dinner is made. After dinner, and a smoke, the boss says let's get at it, and all hands catch their cam, or cutting out horses, and ride out to the cattle camp. The boss places the men around the cattle. An average camp will be about 3,000 head, and he tells 2 jackaroos to keep the cattle that are cut out, and then goes amongst the mob himself, with 1 or 2 stockmen. He finds a cow with an unbranded calf, works them to the edge of the mob, gives them a cut with his whip, and out they run. Sometimes they object to go out, or the cow and calf split, and then the camp horse, if it's a good one, will follow that cow or calf like a dog, and dodge it out. Soon the job is done, and the cattle are said to be clean, and are let go. The cows, calves and strangers will then make a start for home. A little girl needs her papa to love her with fatherly charm, to soothe her when she's hurt, and keep her safe from harm. A girl needs her papa to show her a man who's good, to help her make good choices, as only a father could. A woman needs a father, just to be aware he'll always be there for her, to sustain her and to care. My papa's been all these things to me. I hope that he can see how much I treasure him. My papa means the world to me.
February the 26th, 1891. Dear Mrs. Tinkler, I now address these few lines to let you know the particulars of my poor Kittie's death. You asked if she has been long ill. Kittie was not laid up, but has been subject to illness since December the 7th, 1885, from what the doctor described as epileptic fits. She would be all right for 5 or 6 months when she might have a slight attack. She has had advice from different doctors, and one called a clever woman, but not one of them seemed to do her any good. She was getting on very well until she heard of her father's death. She wrote to her sister Mary Ann for the particulars and received no reply. It seemed to be continually on her mind from the 22nd of July last. She had a severe attack of the fits which came on in the night. They continued for about an hour, then she went into a doze. When she awoke the next morning, she was out of her mind and in a hot fever which lasted for 10 days. She recovered for a while until the morning of January the 3rd, 1891, at 4:15. Our daughter, Ivy, called out to me saying, "Mama's sick," that I found Catherine in fits again. She never rallied, and at 5 o'clock, just 1.5 hours later, she died. Catherine is buried at a place called Cummeru Station on the cut of Barrow Creek near Yintabula. It being very hot weather, we had no time to take her into town to a cemetery. I intend to keep the children with me. I could not live away from them. I have a married couple living with me, and the wife cooks and looks after the children. I hope you will be quite recovered from the shock by the time this reaches you. It must have been a severe blow to you all when the news reached you. I have been ill with what the doctor pronounced grippe. I was laid up 14 days. When I got over that, I got sandy blight for 9 days more. I am all right now, thank God. The children quite well. Gertie misses her mother the most and frets a great deal. The younger children speak of their mother every day. I must now conclude, trusting this letter will find you all right again and expecting to hear from you soon. I remain your disconsolate son, John George Hall.